Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Soul and Screen. In this particular video, I will be doing a review on the TV show Tyler Perry's Sistas, Season 9, Episode number 16. Let's just get into it. So, I'm going to say that this was an okay episode. It wasn't boring. The only reason I don't want to say it was good is because the past few or several, let me say it that way, episodes have not been interesting or at all. Like they've been a flop or something like that, in my opinion. Not very interesting throughout the episodes. Just certain scenes have been capturing people, and they typically were the Zach and Fatima scenes or the Andi and Fatima friction, that kind of thing. But the rest of the storyline for the season just hasn't been interesting, in my opinion. So with that being said, this particular episode was better, but because it didn't travel far, I don't want to necessarily say that it was good. It was just better. And I'm honestly hoping that it continues the trajectory and gets better as we close out the season. Anyway, with that being said, let's get into it. So we picked up off from last episode where Fatima again goes into, confront Andi about, her mom telling her basically she needs to get her stuff together. That's why she was going to be fired. And also Fatima wanting to confront Andi about Zach seeing her naked and not saying anything. So Fatima goes to the restaurant, confronts Andi in front of the ladies, and told her basically that she needed to speak with her. She'd be waiting at the bar. When the episode picks up, Andi is going over to the bar and she sits down with Fatima, and she's just like, "Hey, Fatima, what's so urgent?" And Fatima tells her straight out, as we saw in the promo, like, "Do I need to be looking for another job?" And Andi looks and she's like, "Well, no." And she was like, "Why, why would you think that?" And she was like, "Well, your mother said that, basically came up to me and said that if I didn't get my, stuff together, that basically that's what I need to do." And just trying to figure out where she would even come up with that. And so, Andi was like, "I'm not sure where she would, why she would even say that to you, or, and then she should not have said that to you." And so Fatima was like, "Well, did you say anything to her, basically that leaned that way or led her to believe that you were going to let me go?" And Andi told her no, honestly, she shouldn't have done that. And I apologize for my mom overstepping the line. So she did apologize for that. And then she goes, "Okay. And then what about Zach seeing you naked? How come you didn't tell me?" And she goes, Andi goes, "Well, Fatima, in all honesty, just, we've been in a weird place for the past, for a while. And I honestly just didn't want to add any fuel to the fire, especially since I don't really know what's going on or what it's about." And Fatima goes, Andi goes, "Well, but trust me, it was nothing, it was really just something that happened. Nothing happened." And Fatima's like, "Yeah, I know that, Zach already told me everything, but I really have a problem with the fact that you didn't say anything to me because I thought we were friends, And so she again explained where, they're just in this weird place and she doesn't understand why. And Fatima goes, "Well, I don't understand why. Like, why have you been kind of shading me?" And Andi, actually, which was really weird to me, goes, I was hoping that you can tell me." Now, you the one that's holding shade, Andi. So let me just put a pin there. Andi's the one who's holding shade and throwing it at Fatima. So why does Fatima need to explain where it's coming from? It's coming from you. But anyway, so Fatima goes, "Honestly, I'm not sure." She was like, "So is it because of these basketball players, like me working with them or anything like that?" And Andi goes, "Well, no." She goes, "In all honesty, Fatima, like, I owe you an apology because I have allowed jealousy, to kind of overtake me. And, as a result, I've been, shading you." And so Fatima is like, "Well, what is that about?" And she goes, "Honestly, is it because of Karen?" And she's like, "Well, I'm actually happy that you and Karen have, are cool, kind of found some common ground. But yeah, in a way it was about that because you guys went from there, and then now all of a sudden you guys are like, she's calling you in the middle of the night to come and pick her up. But we have, I'm over here doing this case and working this case and trying to get her some, some retribution, but she calls you out of everybody. And so basically it turns out that the shadiness that Andi has been throwing at Fatima is correlated to the Karen situation. Now, with that being said, I was kind of like, it's the reason why, the whole reason about the shade, gotcha, I guess, you know what I'm saying? I don't really think that was really a good reason, because in all honesty, she was shading Fatima before Karen called Fatima to pick her up. Now, remember, Fatima didn't go pick her up until like a few episodes in, but she started shading Fatima like right after Fatima and Zach had the argument about or got into it about the whole, baby thing, or him overhearing Fatima mention to Danny that, she was relieved to hear that the baby that passed was Zach's. Now, remember the outfit she had on. So let's talk outfits. Remember, Fatima had the black and white outfit on. She went to work. She was a little off her game. And that's when Andi started shading her. So my question is, so are you shading her because she took her to the hospital? Because, honestly, it wasn't like she called Fatima to take her to the hospital. She actually just happened to have been at Fatima's house and her water broke, so Fatima took her to the hospital. So I'm not really sure, to me, that lines up. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, that's the reason that they're using, is that Fatima, was the one that Karen called and has been looking to. So that's the reason why Andi has been shading her, to an extent, kind of believable, only because, Andi and Karen have been the closer of the sister circle, so her and Andi are super close, and then Danny and Sabrina are super close, but they're all in the sister circle. So you can kind of understand to an extent, how some, that's my best friend, and you kind of do get a little possessive of your friends sometimes. Some people do, not me, but some people do. But again, since the shadiness happened prior to her calling Fatima, that's why I'm not buying the story. So I'm just going to kind of put, no shade to the writers, but feed it to somebody who's going to eat it. That's not necessarily a storyline or a thing that kind of you can't track it really. So anyway, with that being said, that's what they're using. So Andi and Fatima pretty much make up. Fatima just kind of tells her, listen, real talk, you my girl. I would, would love it if we ever just get to a place where there's some friction, that we just talk about it. Instead of shading each other, just come to me, Andi, and say something, and Andi told her, I agree. I'm so sorry that I let my jealousy, creep in and interfere with our friendship. If I treated you anything less than a sister, I'm so sorry. And of course, Andi, turned on the waterworks and cried a little bit. And so Fatima was like, we good. So they hugged it out, got it together. I will say that's what sisters do. So that part is very believable to me. If you true friends and really got each other's back, then you tend to talk through situations, work it out, and you back good. So anyway, that is the Andi and Fatima situation. So since I'm there, let me just finish with the Fatima stuff. So Fatima just tells Andi that she's going to go back to work, finish up some stuff, and then she's going to go ahead and get out of there. Oh, I will say, from Fatima's standpoint, since everybody did make the job thing a big deal, her dropping the ball, she did own up to that with Andi in the conversation as well. She told Andi she does realize that she, dropped the ball in a couple of things, and just has in the past been better with multitasking, and she's definitely, trying to, get it back into, things back on track and everything. And Andi did acknowledge, could be, the pregnancy and the baby brain. So they again laugh it off and move on. Fatima again tells Andi, I'm about to head back to the office to close out some stuff, and I'll be heading home. Have a good night. So she gets to the office. She's getting ready to leave. And of course, Gary shows up. And apparently, he's walking up behind Fatima, and Fatima draws out, and, on him. And he's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And she's like, what the F are you doing here? He's like, Fatima, in all honesty, I just came to talk to Hayden. And I saw basically that he wasn't here and you were. And so I want to apologize because I'm in the process of making amends with people. So with that being said, I want to, I've already apologized. Like, he didn't, break it down, but basically he said that he's in, trying to make amends. So since he already went to Andi, Fatima and Hayden are next. And apparently he's going to try to get his way to Zach too. So Fatima basically tells him, like, it ain't really nothing that you can say that's going to make me believe that you actually are sorry about this. You've just done too much. And he's like, I just want to apologize and let you know that I am sorry for everything that I did to you, everything that I did to Andi with her being your friend, and even your man Zach. And so believe me or not, I apologize. So Fatima goes home. She basically comes in the house, and Zach is waiting for her, and he's made this little drink for her, and it's like, it's like in a little martini glass, and it looked like it got the salt around the edges, or the kind of stuff or around the edges. And he unhooked it up, and just a little fruit drink for her. And he's like, come in and sit down. And she's like, what is this? And he was like, I made you a Fatima-tini, or a martini, but it's for you. I'm working on a name, but just taste it. Like, he was super pumped and wanted her to taste it and everything. And so she tasted. He was like, it ain't no alcohol, So being mindful that she's pregnant and she can't drink. And so she tasted it. She's like, oh, okay, it's good. It tastes just like cranberry juice. And he's like, yeah. So she's just like, yeah, but thank you. It was nice of him to try to, the gesture. So she thanked him. She's like, but anyway, really, I do got to talk to you. And so she tells him Gary came up to the job looking for Hayden, and he apologized to her for, the stuff that he's done to them all and how it affected her and all that kind of stuff, and pushing her, putting his bodyguard on her and having her pushed down and all that kind of stuff. But she told Zach, on the way home, putting two and two together, I realized that's where that money came from. And if you caught my prediction review of that episode, I called that. I pretty much said it probably was coming from Gary. I'm not sure if everybody else put two and two together. It wasn't super hard or anything like that, but that is where the money came from. But she was like, with that being said, this is Gary, and because he has a tendency to not do things above on the up and up. I think we need to make sure that money is clean, and not dirty money that he giving you. And so Zach was like, yeah, you're right on that. So he went ahead and he grabbed his keys, and, Fatima stands up like, I'm going too. Basically, she looks at him and like, come on. And so they leave. They head over to Hayden's, because Gary had already told Fatima that he was looking for Hayden, that he would go look for him there. So she knew where he was going. So they go over to Hayden's to see what's up and talk to Gary. When they get there, Gary had already made it to Hayden's house, and basically was telling Hayden that, he's there. He's apologizing to Hayden, of course. Nobody is believing Gary and falling for it. Like, Hayden, you went off on him a couple times, they going back and forth, and he even choked him up and everything real quick. And Gary, didn't fight back. He's giving in. Like, he literally let, Hayden, him up and stuff like that. And I'm gonna be real honest, I wouldn't have thought that, Gary is that person. So we'll see if there's some true, if he really trying to change or not, or if this again is just kind of another trick of Gary's, as he tells everybody he's sorry and he's leaving again, stuff like that. But again, like I said, if you truly meant some type of amends, you would just either do a phone call, send an email. You don't just show up to people and try to force your apology upon anybody. And that's something actually that Fatima ended up mentioning to him as well. So anyway, they get to the house. Of course, I said, him and Gary and Hayden have already had the exchange. When they get a knock at the door, when Hayden gets a knock at the door, he's like, I know you ain't setting me up to Gary. Excuse me. And he opens the door, Zach and Fatima. He lets them in, and he's like, Zach is like, soon immediately runs up on Gary, just like, and lets him have it. Like, what the F you doing? What you think you doing? Like, running up on my chick, you know what I'm saying? And, knowing that he's still, upset about the whole, Jasmine and, what's his name? I forgot his assistant's name. Anyway, that whole incident, but pulling a gun on him and all that kind of stuff. And so he's just like, Zach is basically just telling him like, what you want, and I don't want your dirty money, but what's up with rolling up on Fatima and all that kind of stuff. And so Gary again starts explaining to all three of them at this point, meaning, Zach, Fatima, and Hayden, that he really is sorry, that he's just trying to, the whole situation with Jasmine and the whole, them being kidnapped and, Hudson. I was like, dude, what's this dude's name? Him and Jasmine and Hudson holding Gary and Andi up. The whole thing has just changed them, basically. And so he really was telling Zach that the money is clean. I even got a paper trail for it. So here's the information. Zach grabs the envelope from, him and hands it to Fatima so she can look through it. And he's just basically apologizing. So once again, Gary's just on his apology tour. Let's call it that way. And that's it pretty much for them. I'll move on to the sister circle meeting. So when Andi and Fatima were at the bar and they, hugged it out and everything, Andi goes back over to the sister circle. And when she gets there, Karen is like, hey, what's up? Like, and Andi was like, oh, it's fine. We just need to take, have a conversation about something. And so Karen is like, well, but Fatima came over here kind of like upset. So I know you ain't just going to not tell us like what happened. And so she was like, it was a situation at work and now it's handled. And so Danny cuts in and she's just like, just move on, because, she already ticked off at Andi because she feel like she's being real cryptic and lying and stuff anyway. So she's like, she ain't gonna tell us no way. So just, Karen, move on. What is this about? Like, what? Karen basically just like, okay, so... And she just tells him, I decided to move. So she discloses that where her and Aaron decided to move to is in Seattle. And so the ladies are like, what? And she's like, yeah. And so she tells them, what's been going on with her. And just how she, needs to get away, especially, knowing that the baby passed. And, she just really wants to distance herself from the place that she's experienced a lot of trauma and hurt. That's all. Again, the sisters, kind of bring up to her, it looks like you most likely running versus necessarily dealing with this. And so she explains a little bit more, and she does say that, she kind of learned or heard something from her, the group that she went to, that, basically sometimes change is necessary in order for your healing process. And that's just me paraphrasing. She didn't say it exactly in that way, but that's basically the point that she was making. And so they're like, okay, so they, of course, are explaining that they're going to miss her and just kind of like, what are you going to do when you don't have, this, us to be here to help kind of walk you through everything and deal with some stuff. Like, you've been going through some stuff and you didn't really handle it, in the best way. So, what happens if you get into that place of depression again, basically, especially since you're going to Seattle. For those who may not know, sometimes Seattle is very... it rains a lot, right? It rains a lot and it can be gloomy. And they actually do say that people who, who have depression and things like that, they tell them to kind of stay clear from dreary places and rain and stuff because, just from, I guess, like not really having enough, sun and stuff. You're already kind of depressed. You don't need the day to be gloomy, and it can rain like all day. I'm actually from Northern California, so I can attest, or I grew up there, attest to the fact that it rains a lot. And if you are not used to that type of weather, you didn't grow up in it already, and then you kind of experience a bout of depression, it probably will trigger you into a different place because you're not used to it. And so I can see their concern from that. But it seems like Karen literally is trying to go from as far away from Atlanta, Georgia that she can. And she just decided to go that way. So anyway, they all have a discussion about it. They're talking. In the middle of them talking, Danny and Andi are getting into it again, going back and forth. Danny basically tells her that, she's just tired of all the lying and stuff like that. And then again, like I said, they get petty to the point where like Andi gets a little vicious when she argues because while they all are petty as far as bringing up past situations and stuff, like Andi, literally called out the fact that she was like, Preston left you. He left you. And then she started digging in on Tony, what about your dude, the one who don't got no job? And he basically using up, she just went for the jugular. And I was just like, wow, you that mad? Again, they need to work on some healthy conversation between them because she went to the most immediate low blows when all Danny is doing is pointing out that you're not being truthful and honest about certain things, which is not wrong. Honestly, if you're going to be friends with me and you're going to lie, I'm good on you. There ain't there's no point of us having a conversation or communicating because I don't believe anything that you say. And I don't believe that you can have any type of a healthy relationship at all when there's lying involved in it. And Andi does have the tendency to always kind of omit certain pieces of information. And when people call her and tell her she's lying, she's like, well, I omitted that, which is a lie. You know what I mean? You purposefully leaving out pertinent information is you lying. And you know what I'm saying? And so Danny calling out something that's actually a problem, not just to you, although it is, because as a friend, I'm supposed to be watching your back. And I'm telling you that, when you get to lying and stuff like that, that it doesn't just end up having, repercussions on you. They have actually ended up being in the experiencing the effects of Andi's lies and omission of her getting back with Gary. Am I going to get with Gary? All that kind of stuff. So the fact that Danny is bringing this up, I'm not mad at it. I'm going to be really honest and say I probably would be doing the same thing. And so, but with Andi, she immediately starts trying to hurt her. Danny was actually hurt that Preston, chose that decision. You using stuff that's hurting me, that caused me hurt, caused me some, pain and relationship of us breaking up to, to kind of come at me, to hurt me because you mad because I'm telling you truth. You know what I'm saying? So, it's just the way that Andi is operating right now. I'm not okay with it. It was somebody in the comments on the Sisters page that I had went to that they were saying cut Andi some slack because she's experiencing some trauma and stuff like that. And, kind of saying that people are really emotionally intelligent because they're not giving Andi any mercy. Now I will say that I think that's a little far for, of a reach. And, I try not to call people names and disrespect, what I mean? I try to do it in a generalization type of form, but I also don't think that that's an accurate, perception to say that people are emotionally not emotionally intelligent because they're not extending mercy to Andi. Andi is moving forward and is not outside of those 2 episodes. Like I said, she's moving as normal. She's not giving anybody any indication, that anything is going on. She's trying to pour herself into her work and everything like that. And that's not to say that that's necessarily healthy, but it's also not okay for you to lash out at other people because you're experiencing pain. And the comment to extend mercy to the point where you're not correcting it. See, for me, I'm a course correction kind of chick, like at work, in my life, with friends, everything. So I'm the person that's going to talk to you directly so that we can do some course correction, whether that means on your end or my end. But from a friendship standpoint, yeah, you know what I'm saying? I'm not mad at Danny. I'm very direct like Danny. I'm not rude with it. I am direct though. And a lot of people are not used to direct speech. And so they tend to try to say that when you speak directly to them, it's rude. I don't feel that way. I feel like if you are kind and you can still talk to someone directly, you should, because I don't believe in sugarcoating. So the fact that Danny and Andi, you know, she tried to go to Andi and talk to her, but then of course, you know, sarcasm sticks in. Don't get me wrong. I'm as sarcastic as they come in certain instances. So I get it. But anyway, it leads to them getting into this banter through the whole time and never really kind of reconciles. They basically, you know, keep going back and forth, which is what they do, in all honesty, to the point. So when Andi was getting ready to leave, because Karen, you know, they all accept that Karen's leaving, and she goes, I got to go. And then Andi goes, I have to go too. I got some errands to run. And so she leaves, you know what I'm saying? But when she leaves, she actually still tells Danny bye, like, you know, okay, bye, Danny. And Danny is just like, I'm done. Like, you know, I ain't even about to say bye to you, which is, you know, petty. But I'm just saying that that's how they're so used to, this is their norm. This is how they do each other, that Andi just popped up and left like everything is fine. Like, okay, bye. I'll talk to you guys later. Where Danny is like, nah, that's not so with me. So anyway, Andi leaves, and it's just Danny and Sabrina, where basically Danny tells Sabrina, like, I'm not really about to do this whole lying thing with Andi anymore. Like, if she's going to be lying, basically, I'm good on it. Like, and I'm not mad at that. Again, Sabrina says something like, you know, about the sister circle really falling apart and everything like that. And, you know, if they actually do allow Karen to leave the show, or if she's really going to be written off the show, it is going to be a better insertion for Fatima to be a part of the sister circle, because as I said in a previous video, I have no true belief that Fatima and Karen will ever really be able to be on that level, especially anytime soon. Like, it would take, you know, Karen staying in Atlanta, and then her and Fatima being within around each other, the circle, you know what I'm saying? And Karen actually showing that she is truly changed and not, you know, trying to interfere in her and Fatima and Zach's relationship and things like that. Now, can it be done? Yes. But I do believe that Fatima would need to see some proof outside of you just being nice for a couple of days, because again, that is something that she's done in the past, where she acts nice for a little while, and then as soon as, you know, she's over it, you know, she back attacking Fatima and stuff like that. So if Fatima is really going to be engrafted into the sister circle for sure, like showing up to dinners and lunches and stuff, and they keep Karen in the show, they would definitely have to spend some time cultivating that in a more authentic way than they have been pushing this whole redemption story with Karen. So if Karen leaves, it does leave room for Fatima to kind of come in and be the voice of reason for the group, because I can see Fatima stepping up and kind of trying to, like, you know, talk to being reason. Like I said, being the voice of reason. So Andi, real talk, you do be holding out some stuff, but Danny, you know, you got to give her some space. Like, sometimes she may not be ready to have that conversation, that kind of stuff. And Sabrina's still playing the woo 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 chick, but at the same time, that might be Sabrina, like, you know, so let's talk about Sabrina. So Sabrina right now, and her and Danny are talking, and Sabrina is now starting to do what Danny is literally talking about, is irritating her about the Andi situation, which is lie. And what I mean by that is Danny has already told Sabrina, you need to stay away from my cousin. He not a good dude. Just, I'm telling you, you're not ready for that kind of stuff. And instead of Sabrina just being like, real talk, Danny, like, I'm just going to talk to him. Like, because you're a grown woman. I can't make you stop talking to my cousin. I can't make you stop talking to no dude. But you lying about it is what's going to tick Danny off and possibly put some space between them, because once again, that's what Danny's issue is with Andi. So I feel like that's kind of a storm that's brewing is going to happen, of course, between Danny and Sabrina, because Sabrina wants to still have sex with her cousin, but I think she also is going to start falling for him. And, you know, it sounds like Danny's trying to save her from some heartbreak that she know about. And here's the thing, I've been through that too. I've had a friend who I tried to stay away from my cousin, and didn't work. And guess what? She didn't listen, and she ended up getting jacked, because we probably, well, I can't speak for everybody, but I do have a couple of janky people in the family, right? And so users, and I told her and she didn't listen. And so she ended up, getting, being a part of the rest of the group of women that got hurt by this particular person. So anyway, sounds like Sabrina and Danny are getting ready to experience some waves and some turbulence in their relationship, as well. And then, I think that's pretty much it. As I said, I will not be discussing the Maurice and Paige stuff. So, who cares? You know what I'm saying? So anyway, but that's pretty much it. Let me know what you thought about the episode. I'd love to hear what you thought. Did you think it was a good episode, a great episode? Like what? Also, the interaction between Andi and Fatima. Let me know. I thought it was a pretty decent one. It's they kind of, it could have been more, but they did do a good resolve, and at least they allowed them to have the conversation. So I was okay with that. But so anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments, and let's get into our normal conversations. And again, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.